You're listening to Music Student 101. The more you listen, the more you learn how to listen. So keep listening. And now, your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Matt.
What's up, Jeremy?
Let me ask you, what do you think is one of the most, if not the most important skills we're going to be learning as music students?
Ear training.
You just went right into it.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to think about that.
No, I didn't. Well, look, there are a lot of people going out in the world and picking up instruments and playing music in a lot of places. One of the things that's going to make you stand out is your ability to do the kind of things that you're doing in ear training. Be able to look at a piece of sheet music and know what that music is going to sound like before you ever go to play it. Or be able to listen to music and understand what's going on, not just have it be sounds that sound good, but understand musically what's going on without music to look at. These kind of skills are going to be extraordinarily important in setting you apart as somebody who is a music professional.
And that's one of the more exciting things to me about it, because there's still plenty of moments where I hear something new that I might not have caught last week.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Because of these little skills I was given, now I know what to call them, and I know how to communicate them to other musicians.
Oh, absolutely. And it can change your own perspective so much as well. You can be listening to something and just understand that, hey, that was a minor third interval. That, they used that to sound intimidating or something. Game of Thrones will never be the same, man, I tell you.
So like we were saying, you're given the tools to make this happen, but it doesn't all gel on the first day.
We should iterate this as much as possible. We know that this stuff is hard.
Exactly.
Being a music student, it's not just about empirical knowledge. It is a skill set, and there's no more perfect example of that than ear training.
It's really a skill set that continues to grow and evolve long after you first learn it. Not more than a few weeks ago, I recall hearing a song on the radio that I hadn't recognized before, but it ended on this chord that I did recognize as being a ninth chord, which a type of ninth chord anyways, that I don't recall ever being able to recognize before. And I remember being like, oh,
yeah,
hey, all right, man.
Yeah, and it's so exciting when that happens. And he goes like, listen to that. That was a 5-to-1 cadence. I heard that.
Yeah.
That rocks.
And eventually you're going to hear a song on the radio that you like or that you're familiar with, and you'll be able to identify chords within the song. And eventually you'll start to identify progressions. And next thing you know, you'll be at the point where you can just hear a song or a melody for the first time, and boom, you know what it is. You can replicate it.
Right. And then one day you'll be sitting in a concert listening to a piece of music and go, I can't believe he used a secondary dominant there. Why not just use a leading tone chord? That would have been so much more effective. God.
You too can be that guy.
You can be that person.
So don't get too intimidated. Maybe you have some apps that you use for ear training. Maybe now's a good time to talk about some apps, actually.
Maybe now it is. So there's an app called McGamet. This is the most comprehensive app that I have found so far. It's actually what we used when we were in college, if you remember.
I remember. In fact, not too long ago, I actually downloaded McGamet again just to see where I stood. And I got to say, Matt, I was a little disappointed in myself. I figured, I guess it's not like riding a bike. Sometimes,
No, it's not. Ear training is not. You kind of got to use it or lose it. Last time I was on McGamet myself, I was a little bit definitely not as good as I had been before. So I gotta keep back on it. It's just like practicing your instrument, imagine if you didn't play for, 6 or 8 months, what would happen to your, it's not like you'd forget necessarily, but you wouldn't be as good as you were when you quit. So
a little rusty.
A little rusty.
Maybe a little dusty.
Yeah, some cobwebs there. And then imagine if you didn't play your instrument for 10 years, We certainly wouldn't know how to play anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about McGamet. Can you kind of describe how it's set up?
Well, McGamet is comprised of several different sort of ear training components. So you have melodic dictation, where it plays a melody and you have to write that melody in sheet music. It has harmonic dictation, where you do that with 4-part harmony. It has interval recognition. They play intervals, and you choose what it is. You can listen to it as many times as you want, I recall. But then in all of these different categories, they are set up in levels. So level 1, really easy. Level 2, really a little bit harder. So forth and so forth. You have to do well enough on a certain level to advance to the next one. So there's already that sort of self-competition thing and personal record beating sort of ingrained in the software. I think you have to get like 15 out of 25 or something like that
to move on or
to
be accepted. You basically it gives you like an example, so it'll play maybe 2 intervals and it'll give you the bottom note, and then you add the top note.
Yep.
Say what kind of interval it is, and then click yes or okay.
You're right.
And hope to God that
hope to God you got it. Yeah, you can get into that situation where you're just sort of randomly guessing. It's like
brain fry.
Yeah, and then of course that never gets you anywhere. But
time to put it down for a second.
Yeah.
Well, we bring up McGamut because it's actually we're going to talk about a few other apps. McGamut is actually a desktop type app software.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the most comprehensive in terms of checking yourself, grading yourself, and just everything it covers.
And gets into the most advanced versions of this, too. I mean, once you get up to level 20 or 21, 22, you're doing some pretty difficult ear training exercises. So
I haven't checked that out yet. I'm kind of scared, too.
Yeah, it gets scary, man.
So MacGamut is spelled M-A-C, capital G, capital A, capital M, capital U, capital T.
Right.
It sounds like it's all Mac. It's actually Mac and PC.
It is. I think it may have used to have only been Mac. I don't really know for sure, but it's everything now.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
A few years ago it was about $60. Now it listed $40. As of this day, which is
Yeah, you never know.
August 2016. It is about $40.
It is about $40, and if you want to get better at ear training, it is really the best $40 you'll ever spend in your life. You can just sit there, hanging out when you have some spare time, and practice your ear training. Practice on McGamut. Try to get, if you're anything like me, you get a little obsessed with level advancement. It's like I want to get to that next level.
Yes.
This is what makes MMO games so addictive, isn't it? He's like, I just got to get you. I'm almost there. Come on.
That explains my Angry Bird addiction so many years ago.
My Angry Bird addiction. Yeah. Oh, Angry Birds. Wow. To think of the time we wasted on Angry Birds.
Just made me angry.
I was angry at the end.
But we digress.
But we digress. Yeah.
So if you don't have a $40 budget.
If you don't have a $40 budget, there is a website called musictheory.net. And under sort of the umbrella of musictheory.net is the website and a couple of different apps, all of which are potentially very good resources. So one of those apps is an ear training app called Tenuto. And you can get this on your phone or your iPad, and hang around playing Angry Birds. Or you can hang around and practice on your ear training just wherever you are. I think it's got some simple interval recognition, some simple maybe some simple melodic dictation.
Yeah, you get to kind of set your level, start where you want to. But yeah, Tenuto, I guess musictheory.net, that would be the ear training app, which actually lists $3.99. Which is completely reasonable in my opinion.
Pretty reasonable considering you'll pay way more than that for like Forge of Empires or something, which won't help you pass ear training.
So that's the ear training app that comes along with musictheory.net. There's also a theory app.
Yeah, theory lessons.
Yeah. And it takes it really from the ground up. So I will go ahead and say that episodes 2 and 3, melody and harmony and then rhythm, are a little theory heavy. I mean, we move a little fast, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
But you haven't seen anything yet. So before we move on, very, very soon is coming an episode on the major scales and key signatures. And I think it would greatly benefit you guys just to go ahead and get these theory apps.
Yeah, an episode on the major scales and major key signatures, followed closely, if I remember correctly, by an episode on the minor scales and minor key signatures. So if it sounds a little confusing, a great tool might be go and download Theory Lessons, because it starts sort of basic, and it's not ear training as much. It's more theory concepts, and start with those levels. Do they advance the way the ear training apps do in Theory Lessons?
It seems on the homepage they have a glossary, and it starts off with the basics, rhythm and meter, scales and key signatures, intervals, and so forth. So you'll click on a topic, and it'll start to explain it, and then you move on to the next point, and it'll add animations to help you better understand whatever topic you're looking at.
Right. Good. Yeah. So definitely worthwhile, especially if you're just starting to learn all of this stuff. You can never have too many sources of information.
And now here's one app that strictly kind of focuses on ear training. It is called Better Ears.
See, I have not heard of this one.
Well, actually, you have. It used to be Karahan.
Oh, I have heard of this one.
And I think we both had Karahan back in the day.
Yeah, it was called Karahan Beginner.
Yes. Well, okay. So now what used to be Karahan Beginner is now Better Ears Beginner, and that is the free version.
No longer named after the conductor, sadly.
Kind of a shame.
Yeah.
But actually more specific to what it is. I think I can imagine a lot of people seeing Karahan and being like, what the hell
Yeah.
could that possibly be?
Am I supposed to practice my conducting? I'm not going to do that.
How can I learn that from an app? I guess you could learn anything from an app. Really.
Question for later, I suppose.
Indeed. But anyways, so there's a free version, which is very stripped down, and then there's a $9.99 version, which I assume is way more comprehensive.
Probably, yeah. And again, this is another one, and this is, in my experience, it's maybe not as comprehensive as my Gamut per se, but still pretty comprehensive, and there's a lot of different kinds of exercises you can do to build your ear training up, and it's definitely something worth checking out. Again, for as little money as you're talking about, you said one version is free and then one version is for $10. For that amount of money, to be able to keep up this skill, you'll reap the benefits for the rest of your life. This is what separates, in many respects, this is what separates professional musicians, serious musicians, from just, some guy that bought a guitar with his last paycheck, is the ability to understand music in this way and understand these basic components of music and recognize them when you hear them.
Right. And be able to communicate them to other musicians.
Absolutely.
I think the only thing left worth mentioning is this app called Music Theory Pro, or MTP. And it's by a guy, Dr. Joel Clift at USC and APU. And it sounds kind of like he's our kind of guy.
Ooh.
It has theory training for note names, key signatures, intervals, chords, and scales. It has ear training based on intervals, chords, and scales, and tempos.
Wow.
Tempos, Matt.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. There's not a whole lot out there that'll test your ability to pick up on certain tempos.
And I don't recall being ever tested on that in school.
I don't either, but it's a pretty important skill when you think about it.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had been tested on it. So even if you're not being tested on that, for a very reasonable $3.99, check out this app and learn more about tempo.
Definitely.
Especially all you rhythm people.
Yeah. Drummers, we're looking at you.
We're looking at you.
Stop speeding up.
So I think that's a pretty, I think that's a pretty good discussion on the apps. Let's talk a little bit about some things we can do, some things we did to help us.
Oh yeah.
What are some things you did, Matt?
So you want me to tell the Pop Goes the Weasel story?
I love the Pop Goes the Weasel story.
So there was a time in my life when I actually lived 2 hours away from the university that I was attending. So this was a 2-hour drive to class every day and a 2-hour drive away from back home every day, which was okay. 2 hours isn't as long as you think it is when you start to get used to it. But during this time, my radio crapped out on me.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'm just sort of sitting there listening to the road under my wheels for 4 hours every day. It got really, really boring. So what I would do would be to take simple little songs, simple little nursery rhyme songs or something like "Pop Goes the Weasel," for example, and see which would be da 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 da, and see if I could translate that into solfege, into my scale numbers. So that would be so do do re mi so mi do so do re mi do. Yeah, 4 hours alone in the car every day, man. Yes.
A man can do great things with some ear training.
Yeah.
With those kind of techniques.
So I'd do that. I would try to figure it out. I would be, 30 minutes into this drive and be already pretty good at that. So then I would start trying to improvise. Like I would do, I would add neighbor notes. So do re mi so mi do ti do. Yeah.
Getting fancy.
Yeah, doing things like that. It was crazy what I could get into by the time I actually got to class. I would read the license numbers of the cars in front of me.
Oh.
Yeah, and try to, if it was like, 175, 175,
Dude.
That wasn't 175 that I just sang, but, I'm out of practice.
Right. That is great. I never even thought about that one.
Yeah, well, that was hard. Those numbers are random, and they don't always make a lot of natural musical sense, right? Yeah, but yeah, you do what you can, and it is a pretty dorky thing to do.
That's pretty geeky, man. But I think I might have you beat.
Really?
Yep. Well, see what you think. Here's what I did. So back when we were in school, you'd have your harmonic dictation. So basically, they would give you 4 piano chords in a row, and you have to determine which, they'll usually start with a 1.
Right.
And then you figure out which goes next, 4, 5, 1.
Yeah.
You kind of have to figure out this harmonic dictation.
Right.
So what I did was I got out my little tape recorder and recorded. We had a piano at the house, so I would record these chord progressions onto my little tape and then take the tape and ride around in my car. When most people are riding around listening to their favorite music or talk radio or whatever, I'm riding around 151.
That's pretty good. I do think you win. I think you're more dorky than me.
Thank you.
Because you had a radio.
I had a radio. I had to.
You could have been listening to Bob Marley or something.
Well, believe me, I listened to plenty of Bob Marley.
You listen to that, but you also chose to listen to just chord progressions.
Exactly. But anyways, that was one thing I did. Here's a couple of other cool ideas that I did. Speaking, a lot of these have to do with driving around in my car because that's the one time I'm listening to music.
Right.
But I was a huge Beatles fan. Most people, I think, know of or dig the Beatles at the very least. John and Paul, John usually was kind of the lower voice. Paul was usually the higher voice whenever they were harmonizing.
Yeah, they'd sing in thirds.
Exactly, and they're always singing in usually really tight thirds, together.
Right, yeah.
So I would sing Paul's part, and then I would run the song again, and I would sing John's part.
Very nice.
And I would kind of establish the idea of what a harmony is.
Right, yeah, and to sort of teach you what that third interval is.
Right.
Yeah, if you wanted to get really advanced in it, you could look for harmonies that had specific intervals. Like maybe some other band, harmonizes in fifths a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And do that, and then get a good idea of what fifths sound like.
And another cool thing to do is if you're listening to someone that there are 2 people harmonizing, you already know those 2 harmonies.
Yeah.
Throw a third in there.
Yeah, throw a third in there. See if you can come up with, or if you're listening to something that has no harmony, try to harmonize with it. See how well you do with that.
Exactly. So that's a cool thing for harmony. Another thing I mentioned a while back was actually singing the notes while you're playing your instrument.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is going to be my first official apology, actually, because I didn't think about the wind players and the brass players.
Kind of hard for them to sing while playing.
Well, maybe they can hum while blowing into that thing. I'll just apologize and that be that. But you know your scales. Singing along with those.
Well, you could always sit down at the piano and if you're a wind instrument, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Options are there.
Options are there, but yeah, singing while playing your instrument, more of a string player thing, I guess.
Right. But another cool thing that I did was, write your own melodies. Say you're learning intervals,
Absolutely.
and you have a certain interval you have a hard time with.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a hard time with a major 6 or something. maybe write your own melody that has that major 6 in it, or that starts with that major 6.
That focuses on or emphasizes it in some way. Absolutely. You're also practicing your composition chops when you're doing that.
Exactly. And something I did way early on was getting bogged down with originality. Don't get bogged down with originality.
Don't get bogged down.
There's only 12 notes in the scale. It's a good chance that melodies come up before at some point in time. Don't let that stop you and be like, I can't do that. Because
Yeah.
most of the simple melodies you're going to be dealing with at this time are things that have been done before.
Yeah. We're all learning. Originality is something that comes with time. You can't force it.
Now, coming up, not immediately, but in the near future, we're going to have an episode on perfect pitch versus relative pitch.
Right.
That was one of the first things I asked my college professor, Dr. Clemens. You remember Dr. Clemens?
I do. Great guy.
I was asking him, what is perfect pitch? Is it something that you can learn? And he said, well, there's two things. There's actually perfect pitch, and again, we'll go into further discussion on this, but there's perfect pitch, which some people are basically born with, you know?
Right.
It's something that you just have at different degrees. But relative pitch is actually something that we can learn, which is very exciting in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we are attempting to learn when we practice on McAmet or practice ear training. We're attempting to improve our relative pitch.
All right, so let's talk about relative pitch.
Relative pitch is essentially your ability to define what a pitch is based upon its distance from another pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to tell that these two pitches are a perfect fourth apart, or being able to hear one note and sing the note, or play the note or find the note that would be a major third above that. Notes in relation to each other, being able to sing major and minor scales, or play major and minor scales, or hear major and minor scales. This is relative pitch.
So say you're listening to a song that you really dig on the radio, and you know what key it's in, you know what chord it ends in. You hear that chord, and you're like, okay, there's a G chord.
Right.
Where's that G note? Then you find that G note in your head, that tonic of that G chord.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to use that note as your reference note. Next time you hear someone whistle something, or you hear another note or another song, you kind of, from that anchor point, figure out where we went.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And from there you can sort of piece together the whole song.
Yep.
This is what people are sort of doing when they're playing by ear or learning something off the radio. They're doing it with a lot of trial and error. Improving your relative pitch will reduce the amount of trial and error it takes. Ideally to the point that there's no trial and error involved. You just know what's going on in any given song, which is definitely a thing that's possible.
And there are tones and notes everywhere all the time in everyday life.
Yes, indeed.
And you can use those as reference notes. I have a particular smartphone that a lot of people, I think, have.
Yeah.
And the default ring is a little C note.
Yeah.
Bing.
Oh, yeah.
There's my C.
Yeah, and try to sing, next time you hear that, sing that note to yourself. Try to sing the third above that. Try to sing the fifth above that.
Yeah, challenge yourself.
Yeah,
That's
try
right.
to write a melody around that starts on that note, goes somewhere else, and comes back to that note or something. Little things like this that you can do to really, they may sound a little dorky, but there are things that can definitely, help you come to understand exactly how music works. Not just on a conceptual level, but just sort of have a type of tactile experience with it. It's very, very important.
Another one, and I hate this one because it's such a horrible sound, but fluorescent light and just ground hum, like 60 cycle
Yeah,
hum.
yeah.
Well, that's 60 hertz. That's like a B flat.
Yep.
If not very close to a B flat. So there's one other place you can find a reference tone.
Right.
But
yeah.
even if you don't know the names of these notes, you can still use that tone and use that as a reference tone and move on,
Yeah,
stack intervals on top of it,
absolutely.
do scales
Right.
from it.
Right chords around it. Yeah.
So go ahead and start checking out some of these apps. Go ahead and sharpen your knives, as your theory knives. Sharpen your ear
theory.
knives. If that's the thing.
Don't sharpen your ear with a knife.
Don't
That
sharpen
sounds
your ear with a
dangerous.
knife. That will really mess you up. Okay, so go ahead and sharpen your skills now, because this is early on, and we are going to be talking a little bit more a lot about theory
A lot.
in coming episodes. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you find it useful, and we'll look forward to doing more very soon.
Yep. See you soon.
Matt, do you still sing Pop Goes the Weasel
No, I don't.
in your car?
No. I've moved on to the Olympics theme now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good.
Maybe you have some of your own ear training tips you would like to share. Send them and/or your questions and comments to info@musicstudent101.com.